Hello, my name is Kelly Secor and I'm a student at Metropolitan State University of Denver. This following video is a training manual on sexual harassment, bullying, and other types of harassment. This subject can be very difficult to talk about, but it is important that we gain a full understanding of what it is and how to respond to it. The learning objectives are to understand the definition of harassment, sexual harassment, and bullying, know how to report harassment of any kind, examine real-life scenarios of harassment, become familiar with the policy of this organization. Policy statement. This organization is devoted to building a safe and fun environment for all customers, employees, and volunteers. Discrimination based on age, gender, sexual harassment, and bullying are prohibited. This organization has a zero tolerance policy of any behavior of this kind will face disciplinary action. All complaints will be taken seriously with respect. The definition of harassment is acting aggressively, embarrassing someone, or intimidating or pressuring someone. This can be verbal or physical. This is a specific type of discrimination that creates unfavorable environment and causes distress to employees and customers. Harassment can include verbal slurs, physical behaviors. It can involve more than one protected characteristic, and online harassment. The definition of sexual harassment: the unwanted advances of sexual behavior without consent that causes distress and discomfort. This can include verbal harassment or physical harassment. This can include sexual, anal intercourse, penetration with a foreign object, or other body parts. This can be a one-time incident or occur on several occasions. Physical conduct is unwanted physical touch or advances, physical violence, or sexual assault. Verbal conduct are comments on an individual's sexual appearance, orientation, private life, appearance, age, and it's also sending sexual messages by phone, email, social media, or app. Insults based on sex, sexual orientation, or appearance. Nonverbal conduct is catcalling, which includes whistling or indecent exposure, sexually suggestive gestures, showing of sexually suggestive or explicit material. Consent is the verbal agreement or permission for something to happen. You can say no at any time you wish to stop an activity. Consent cannot happen when an individual is under the influence of drugs or alcohol, saying yes due to fear, unable to understand what is happening, or someone who is under the age of 17. Sexual harassment can happen to anyone despite sex, age, or sexual orientation. Both men and women can be victims. It can come from any sex, sexual orientation, any level employee, or from outside the workplace. It can take place in several different settings. It can occur at the workplace, on the internet, at any facility or campsite, during breaks, after working hours, with someone who is physically helpless, clothed or unclothed. All complaints will be taken seriously and respectfully by the organization. All employees and participants should understand they can report sexual harassment anytime to someone higher up. What to do if you are a victim. Verbally speak up and say no. Report immediately to someone higher up. You can look at the organization's policy on who to report their harassment to. Keep all records of communication, record the time, date, and details of the incident, and if you are uncomfortable, call a crisis hotline and they can guide you through the process. One example is the National Sexual Assault Hotline, 1-800-656-HOPE. As a supervisor, you should be familiar with the policy and the actions to take if harassment occurs. Become familiar with the state laws surrounding harassment and discrimination. Read and become very familiar with this harassment policy. These are the steps to take when you receive a complaint. Escort the victim into a safe environment and let them know you are listening and make sure you are being respectful. Inform the victim of what is going to take place in the process. The victim should know that they can go outside the organization to make a further complaint. Record the details, date, and time of when the incident occurred. Discuss if the victim wants to make a formal or informal complaint and talk through each. Inform the victim that they can make a complaint outside of the company. An informal complaint is an agreement or action that will take place to stop further behavior. An informal complaint is usually for a less serious offense, but the incident is still taken very seriously. Steps the victim will take. They need to talk to an employer or colleague about the incident, ask the organization to address the incident, and the victim should seek advice from HR, a supervisor, or a contact person at Equal Opportunity Commission. Steps the employer will take. They will gather all information on both sides of the situation. They will help both parties reach an agreement without further investigation. And they will encourage all employees to review the sexual harassment policy and, if needed, conduct more training. A formal complaint occurs when agreements have not worked out. The process is to make a report of the incident, the details, and evidence. Consider all evidence. An investigation, the complaint, that includes details of what happened, where, and when. Interviews of all parties involved, and consider disciplinary action. Reporting. If you see any harassment or discrimination, all employees, customers, and volunteers should report the incident immediately. Reporting should be submitted to either a high-ranking manager or the Human Resources Department. Stopping misconduct. If you see something, say something. Report it immediately, and if possible, speak up to stop the behavior. Gaining a full understanding of the situation from all sides is essential when investigating the incident. The supervisor is in charge to investigate the allegations and hear all complaints. The faster the incident is reported and investigated, the better for all parties involved. One aspect to consider is hiring an outside organization to investigate. For example, the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission has the ability to conduct investigations on complaints. The disciplinary actions of the organization will take into consideration the severity of the harassment. If the harasser conducted behaviors such as physical violence, this will result in immediate dismissal. The following sanctions include verbal or written warning, adverse performance evaluation, reduction in wages, transfer, demotion, suspension, and dismissal. This agency has duties and responsibilities to carry out this policy. All employees and volunteers will have extensive training on this policy. This policy will be included in the handbook, and each year all employees will have training regarding it. This organization will annually review statistics and evaluations regarding sexual harassment. Each year, if needed, the policy will be revised and the handbook will be updated. All employees have a responsibility to stay in compliance with this policy and the outcomes of each incident. An annual report will be conducted concerning the incidents of sexual harassment within the organization, and it will look at how well the policy was implemented. This next section will take in consideration other policies. Bullying is the act of manipulating, humiliating, or gaining control of an individual's situation in an abusive manner. The organization has a zero tolerance policy for any type of bullying. If caught, disciplinary action will take place. Cyberbullying includes the following: cyber threats, spreading rumors on social media, taking pictures without permission or consent, and online stalking. Emotional harm are threats, undermining a staff member or employee's work, making offensive jokes. These are just a few examples. Physical harm is physical punishment or abuse, yelling or using profanity, messing around with other stuff or customers' belongings. Again, these are just steps you should take to report bullying. Keep all electronic or physical copies of the bullying. It may feel good to retaliate or bully back, but it is the best idea to leave the situation as soon as possible. Report the bullying to higher up and keep persisting if you feel like you have not been heard. If you see bullying occur, report it immediately to your manager or someone higher up. You can try to help, but reporting it is the best idea. This next clip is a case example of implied photos. This is a real-life example that did happen. Implied photos are suggested photos of nudity. A recommendation is to take screenshots for evidence and save emails. This is a real-life example of an incident that occurred between two staff members at a recreation facility. These staff members were lifeguards, and a male staff member reached out to a female staff member on social media. This female did not give him any of her information, her handle, or her last name, but he still found her online. This male staff member ended up asking the female for explicit photos, and she did not reply to these messages. He continued to persist, and he ended up asking her to buy her photos or buy time to take her photos. He made an apology, but he still continued to ask these questions and ask for photos of her. The female ended up reporting it and saved all the messages, but despite this, the male was still trying to convince her to send photos. This is inappropriate behavior and under the zero tolerance policy, not acceptable. This male staff member should not have sent these photos or even followed her on social media. Having appropriate boundaries is essential to keep a workplace fun and safe. You can apply self-awareness. This can include taking the time to understand your own feelings. Ask someone for help if you're unsure or need guidance. A mentor or someone you trust can help you set these boundaries. Know your limits and state those limits, and then follow through on your boundaries. When you are put into a situation, stand up for yourself and those boundaries that you had previously set. To stay professional, this organization requires employees to adhere to a dress code. Lifeguards are required to wear appropriate swim attire that the organization provides, and that attire only. The dress code is as follows: no baggy pants or tops showing undergarments. Changing should take place in the appropriate locker or bathroom. No merchandise with profanity, cuss words, or gang signs. Closed-toed shoes is recommended. Photo identification should be worn at all times, and business casual attire is recommended. This is a case example of an incident that happened between two co-workers in a shared office space. First, staff should change designated changing rooms, and if you're uncomfortable, leave the space immediately and go report it. Hey Kylie,
Hey!
do you mind if I change in here before my shift?
Yes, I do mind. I'm working right now. Please stop. You're making me very uncomfortable. Okay, I'm gonna go report you.
At the end of this video, I wanted to leave you with a few resources: the Sexual Assault Hotline, the Anti-Sexual Violence Organization, and the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission website. I hope you found this video educational and will help facilitate training in the future on sexual harassment, bullying, and other types of harassment. Thank you.